Welcome to Overcome Podcast. In today's episode, I'm going to talk with the legendary Jimmy Pedro, four-time Olympic athlete, world champion, and also a coach of great athletes. Among them, we have Kayla Harrison, Ronda Rousey, and many, many more. Jimmy is going to talk about the mindset of an athlete and how he is able to identify the key attributes to be a champion. Not only that, but he's going to talk about some really interesting facts about his career as an athlete and some of the obstacles that he had to overcome. Stay there, we'll be right back. Welcome to Overcome Podcast, Jimmy Pedro.
Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you, Jimmy. Been a fan of your work for a long time, so it's a huge honor to really have you on the show. Thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Jimmy, I will start the first question because the podcast is about overcome and about overcoming a lot of obstacles. We had a lot of judokas in this show, Radi, Nick Del Popol, Carrie, and there are a lot of things that are common, but your career is so fantastic, the way that it spread it for so many years, and you were on the top for so many years. So the first question is, how did you keep that longevity in a sport that really beats up your body so much? You know, did you have any kind of special regime that you always were focused on longevity rather than like explosion in 1 year and not really focus on the long term?
Well, number one, I'm paying the price today. For all of those years competing, I'm definitely paying the price today. I've got a disc problem in my neck. I've got numbness in my hand all the time. About a month ago, I had a back spasm. I think it was related to a lower disc problem in my back. I was on prednisone for about 3 weeks straight to try to calm down all the inflammation. So there's no doubt my body has a lot of mileage on it, and I'm feeling it now that I turned 50. So I can say that. But in terms of the regime and the way I was as an athlete, I was extremely flexible, and I tried to maintain my flexibility throughout my entire career. So I did a lot of stretching exercises before training, after training, just to be, supple and limber and loose all the time. So that was a big part of it is staying loose and flexible. So that was a big part of my training regime. And also, I never let myself get out of shape. I never took time off from training. I was all, a lot of, MMA fighters and boxers and, people who have a season to their sport. Typically, you see them, gain 15, 20, or 40 pounds off season, and then they slim down and they get back in shape for when it's go time. But, judo's a year-round sport, and I was somebody that just never took time off. I always stayed fit or stayed active, meaning that, if the World Championships just ended and I was taking a little break from judo, I still ran or I still lifted. I still stayed fit, and I never let myself get out of shape. And I think that helped prevent a lot of injuries, and it helped me, have a long career.
Were you able to stretch throughout all those years? Because I was looking to some of your numbers. 4 Olympic Games, 2 times medalist, World Champion 1999, Pan Am Champion 1995, 1999. So when you look at the spread between 1995 and 2004, I mean, this is like 9 years on top. And the question is, did you always do a lot of randori? Because there is a lot of controversy about doing randori all the time because it's really hard on the body. Or did you focus more on uchikomis and randori was something that you did like twice a week or something?
No, randori was never just twice a week. Randori was all the time. My career started really in the late, I'd say early 90s is when I got on the international scene. And, I had success as a junior athlete, taking third place in the Junior World Championships in 1990. I really broke through on the senior circuit. 1991, started winning medals in Europe when I was 20, 21 years old. I was actually a medal contender I took my first bronze medal in the World Championships when I was 20 years old in 1991. And I was a contender for a medal at the 92 Olympics. And then after that, I always finished 93. I finished 5th in the World Championships. '95 I finished bronze, and so really the career span from '91 till 2004. But I mean, I had to, right? You're an American. You're an American. You don't have as many training partners as the rest of the world has. You certainly can't train twice a day because you don't have any partners to train with in America who will train twice a day with you. So I always had to, make sure that I got some tough physical training. It wasn't always with the highest level training partners, but I made do with what I had. I really basically just went from dojo to dojo in America. And, Monday night I would go in one dojo, Tuesday I'd go to another, Wednesday I'd train at my own dojo, and just moved around to get as many randoris as I could. But it certainly wasn't like it was intense all the time, and it wasn't, 365 days a year with intensity. It was very intense when I went overseas, and I did training camps, and we did 2-a-days overseas and did a lot of randori training there. But when I got to come back home, the level of my partners was a lot less. So it wasn't as physical, it wasn't as intense, and that's when I was able to work on new things and give my body a little bit of a rest.
Yeah, and probably when you were training with someone that was not on your level, you probably exposed yourself to way more because you were trying new things, right?
Right.
Yeah,
for sure.
With your experience, do you think that the Japanese they run Dory every day, or is more in US that you see that?
They do randori every day in Japan. A lot of times twice a day, but realistically, they do judo, or they do randori training every day. The Japanese national team. The difference is that their randori is more playtime. It's not a competition. It's very relaxed in nature. It's not intense. So you can do 10 rounds of randori in Japan comfortably, and you're not physically exhausted when you're done. Obviously, an American who goes there and is training with different partners and it's all new, physically exhausting for us. But when you watch them randori with each other, it's everybody just grabs the gi, we move around freely, and they try to catch one another. And they have a lot of fun doing it. A lot of laughs, they're joking with each other. It's not this physical battle contest. It's just, it's live, don't get me wrong, and their technique is amazing, but it's not grueling, and the likelihood of getting injured is far less. That's why when you see them go to European training camps, when the Japanese team comes and trains in Europe, everybody's out for blood. Everybody's trying to, throw the Japanese person and beat them up and do whatever. So prove themselves, if you will. So that's when you'll see the Japanese national team, like they'll do 2 days on and they'll take a day off, and then they'll come back and do, another day, and then they go home. That's enough. They've had enough. They're just trying to get a flavor and a feel for how the rest of the world plays judo, but they're not necessarily trying to bang heads, every single day.
Yeah, makes total sense. And I've seen some footage of them training, and is exactly what you said. Is very flow. It's almost like jiu-jitsu flow, but randori.
Correct. Exactly. It's not 100% intensity. It's of course there's a guy, every once in a while a young guy will catch an older guy and he'll get pissed off, and then they'll go hard for 5 minutes. But or he'll have done something over the weekend to piss the older guy off, and the guy will throw him through the floor or something. You see that occasionally in Japan, but most of the time it's just fun, relaxed randori.
Yeah, so not only you were an amazing athlete throughout your career as an active athlete, but you also trained some big names: Kyla Harrison, Travis Stevens, Ronda Rousey, and probably these are just some of the major names. There are way more, and there are all other names also that probably are not as famous as these ones that I said. But with your experience from the subject of overcoming, what really make an athlete to stand out when you are training someone? Do you have that feeling? Well, this person really is going to stand out in front of the others. And if you do, what are some of the attributes that you see immediately?
I think the main thing that all of the athletes that I got, the privilege of working with, because it really was a privilege helping them out in their career and helping them reach their goals and being part of their career and their lives. The one thing that stands out with all of the champions is they had a mindset. It was their mentality. It was their mindset. It was the heart of a champion and the fight of a warrior. All of those athletes that you mentioned, they would kill themselves to succeed. they would put their head through a wall if that's what it took to win the match or to win the title. All of them were extremely miserable when they didn't succeed.
Yeah.
So they had a will to win that was far greater than accepting defeat. And you saw it a little bit in Ronda's MMA career. You could see that she would do anything to win a fight, right? To win a match. She would never tap. She would never submit. And I think, Travis and Kayla and the rest of them, it's all the same. It really bothered them to lose. And they'd almost punish themselves when they did lose by either, locking themselves in their room. They just couldn't accept the fact that they didn't win. They would then train extremely hard. Either that night or the next day, they'd be on the mat, or they'd be, out for a run. They'd be trying to make up, and they couldn't get that taste of defeat out of their mouth. That they couldn't wait the chance to step on the mat again just to win, because they love winning. They hated losing more than they loved winning.
That's really good.
And when I see a young kid training, or I see a young kid go to competition, if losing doesn't bother them enough, then they didn't put their heart and soul into the journey and into the training to get to that place. Losing really does have to bother a champion.
Interesting. Now, when you say bothering a champion, to the point that person will get depressed, or bothering in the sense that that person wants to immediately start training again and react and get better?
Exactly. It shouldn't be to the point of depression. It should be to the point of, you know what, I hate this feeling right now, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get better for next time. And if that means go out for a run, if that means get in the weight room, if that means review my video, if that means start working on a new technique, I'm not content with where I am. I got to get better so that next time I don't have this same feeling again.
Yeah, makes sort of sense. There is another aspect, and you train a lot of young kids, to people that are coming to do judo. How do you handle the athletes' nerves? Because there's a lot of athletes that they make mistakes when they are nervous, right? And there is always that nervous feeling. Some people say that it's good to be nervous because you are more focused. Some people say it's better to be relaxed. What's your take on that?
Very natural to be nervous. If you've put your heart and soul into something, and it matters whether you win or lose, then anxiety and nervousness is a natural part of competition. It is the athletes that learn how to deal with anxiety, learn how to deal with these nerves, learn how to calm themselves down, and get themselves into a zone where it's a comfort zone, where I've been here before. I know what it feels like. This is a normal feeling. I'm not going to let this bother me. And we actually, do some breathing techniques with the athletes to sort of settle their nerves, to help calm themselves down, reduce their heart rate. Because if there's one thing that kills an athlete, it's anxiety. Yep. You cannot perform at your highest level if all you're thinking about is losing or worried about what the outcome is going to be. So you have to just trust that you've done the training. You've got to learn to teach your body to relax. And again, we do a lot of breathing techniques. They close their eyes, think about nothing, big, deep breaths in, hold the breath, breathe out. It's step, repeat, relax before you compete, go out on the mat fully confident, know what the mission is, execute the game plan, and just trust in your training. And I think it's important. And I think it's important that athletes learn how to deal with this anxiety and sort of get themselves into a ritual of comfort.
Were you this type of athlete when you were competing, that you had those moments and that you have to practice the breathing exercise or things like that? Yes, because early on as a youngster, I wasn't, right? When I was 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, I wasn't like that. No, because I had to learn, right? I had to learn what it meant to be. I had a lot of nervous energy. And for me, I would just run up and down, I'd do sprints. I'd run up and down the warm-up area. I was always getting adrenaline out by exercising. And ultimately, as I got older, I realized, man, I can't keep this up. I'm too old. My body, I'm tired before I go out there and fight. So I had to train my body and understand, this is all part of, successful competition and peak performance. Did you progress from that standpoint of anxiety and nerves over time? Because I heard people saying, "Well, this feeling never goes away. You just learn how to handle, but the feeling is always the same." Do you think is that a true statement?
Yes, the feeling never goes away, but the severity of the feeling minimizes and decreases when you learn
Okay.
how to deal with it. It's almost like, I tell athletes all the time, right? When you compete often, when you're competing all the time, you don't get nervous anymore because you're comfortable competing. You do it all the time. You don't have enough energy to be nervous, to be nervous all the time. So in order to have good performance, you've got to compete often and frequently because you just get used to it. You
Hmm.
learn how to deal with it. It's only when you have a layoff for a very, very long time and you haven't done something for maybe 9 months or 6 months. I haven't competed in 6 months. This feeling is now odd to me. I haven't had it for 6 months.
Yeah.
But when it was just last week or 2 weeks ago, you learn how to deal with it. It's like natural part of your training and your preparation. And that's when you see athletes that have long layoffs, they're typically rusty or they have bad performances. A perfect example is what we just saw with Conor McGregor.
Yep.
To be honest with you, if you watch MMA, as soon as he stepped out of his Rolls Royce in Abu Dhabi and he started walking with his suit and he was fluttering around with his suit and walking kind of strangely, I said to my wife and my kids, I said, man, that guy's nervous right now. He's not himself.
Yeah.
And he ended up having a bad performance.
Yeah.
And to me, that was, he hadn't been in the ring in a while. He hadn't fought. He wasn't used to it. And those other guys are young and they're hungry.
And I think that this actually happened also recently on the Worlds Judo. Because of the pandemic, a lot of athletes were not competing. So there was some match that was pure force, not really whole lot of technique, and they were really
Tight.
rusty. Yeah, yep.
They were very tight, right? Because it was foreign to them. They hadn't done it for a long time. It's like when you get rusty, and you do get tight, you haven't had that feeling. Even that Maruyama match with Abe, those guys hadn't fought for a year, and they weren't their true selves in that match. Although it was a long, good match, if you're a judo fan watching it, they were tight. It was very uneventful.
Yeah, I'm wondering how the Olympics gonna be this year with all these intervals between competitions.
Well, I mean, the IJF has just put out they've just put out a full schedule of Grand Slam events between now leading up to the Olympic Games, and they have a lot of high level competitions coming up. In fact, they're going to have a World Championships in June this year, right before the Olympics. They're going to have a
Oh,
World
this is
Championships.
great. Yeah, I
So
actually just saw Nick's Del Popo update that he is going to Israel.
yeah, Israel is coming up now. They have a Grand Slam in Tashkent in Uzbekistan. They have Grand Slam Paris is going to be in May. The World Championships is going to be in June. The Pan Ams or the Continentals are going to be in April. There's a lot of big, high level events for these athletes to compete in.
This is great because this is definitely going to make them peak by the Olympics.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Now, Jimmy, you brought a great point about mindset, and this is something that I've been reading a lot about because I actually got injured in September last year during a jiu-jitsu tournament. I had a Linz-Frank injury on my foot. It was exactly doing a Tayatoshi that went wrong, and I broke my foot. So I had
Sorry to hear that.
yes, terrible. Had to do surgery. I'm out of the mats since September last year, and that was the whole idea of creating the podcast, talking about overcoming obstacles. Did you ever had any major injury that made you to stop training, and you have to really recover for a long time?
So I had in my career, I had one major injury and another one that was just a really bad setback for me. So my first major injury was when I was 23 years old. So I had already competed in my first Olympics. I had already competed in 2 world championships. And it was in the finals of a competition in Korea. I was fighting against a Russian in the finals of that event. It was the Korean Grand Slam back then. It was called the Sungak Cup. And in the finals of that event, the Russian picked me up with a teguruma. And instead of taking the fall, I stuck my head out.
Ooh.
And when he threw me, I went straight down on top of my head, and then my feet went over my head, and I did like a wrestler's bridge. It was, it was a Wazari score for him. I finished the fight. I didn't really feel anything. I didn't have any problems. But then the next day, when I was on the airplane, I started having a lot of pain in the back of my neck, and I couldn't like lift my head up off my chest very well. And by the time the plane was over, I had to like keep my chin against my chest to have any comfort, because every time I lifted my head up, the disc in the back of my neck was pinching the nerve. And then what happened was, over time, it just kept getting gradually worse, to the point where I had to go see a doctor because my entire arm went numb on me all the way down my fingertips. I couldn't lift my chin up off my chest at all.
And you were young, right?
I was 23.
Yeah. Wow.
So, I ended up having to get an MRI. I couldn't lay down in a bed. I couldn't sleep. There was, I was miserable. I went to the doctors. They said I had 2 bulging discs in my neck, C4, C5, and C5, C6, that were pinching, almost hitting the spinal cord, and what was causing massive nerve damage. And after reviewing the MRI, the first diagnosis from the doctor was that, listen, kid, you are never going to play any contact sports ever again in your life.
Oh,
he told me, my goal for you is to get you functioning back to a normal human being again. I want you to function as a normal human being, but you're never going to play sports again in your life.
Of course, you didn't believe that, of course.
Well, obviously, my first reaction, I was devastated, right?
Yeah.
I was crushed. I mean, I was a Division I wrestler in college. I had just won the Eastern Championships and gone to NCAAs the year before. I had been to the Olympics. I was hoping to go to the Olympics again. And I walked out of there at 23 years old. I was in tears, upset, obviously. My first reaction was upset. But I also knew how much pain I was in all the time. And the fact that I couldn't do anything physically, you tend to believe it, right?
Yeah.
But, I went back to my apartment in school at Brown University. I got myself a traction unit, and it was the only thing that would relieve any pain for me. I would hang the thing over the door. I would hook the harness up to my head. I would sit in a chair. And, for hours, I would just let this thing pull my head away from my body. And that's how a lot of nights, that's how I would sleep, is with this thing just pulling on my head all night, because I couldn't lay down in a bed. So I did that for months. My arm stayed against my chest like this. My entire arm shrunk to nothing. I lost all the nerve, caused damage in the right side of my body.
Wow.
My triceps shrunk to 0. My chest on my right side of my body shrunk to nothing. I had massive atrophy because I wasn't using those muscles ever.
Are we talking about how many months on this? Like 3, 4, 5 months?
I had 4 months of nothing. 4 months of just numbness in my hand 24/7 and not being able to use the right side of my body at all. It wasn't that I could move it, but I had no strength, and it just didn't really work for me. Like, the nerve was dead. So that nerve had to regenerate, and I took a lot of anti-inflammatories. I was sitting in that traction unit all the time. I stayed away from all exercises. And as soon as like the numbness started going away a little bit, I could start to lift my head back up. And after 4 straight months of that, I was able to like move my head again. And I was in an okay, I wouldn't say I was pain-free, but I could start to like train my arm to move again. And I'd just go into the weight room, and I would just make my arm move. And I would, take a barbell, and my left arm would move, but my right arm would,
shake.
And I'd get it.
Yeah.
I'd get it, and just every day I just rehabbed. I went in a swimming pool, and I just kicked on the board and kind of used my hands to move around. And I did that for another month, and then I was pain-free. And it just, I don't know, dumb luck or what, but it just started to come back. So, I started doing judo again after about 6 months. Once I could get full range of motion back in all my arm, and I felt like I had some strength again, then I started judo, just doing, uchikomis and moving and stuff like that. And it took me about a 9-month time to recover, where I could actually, full-time do randori and train.
Wow,
100%.
That's amazing story, because I can only imagine those 4 initial months how was your mental state, because you were in the peak of wrestling and judo, and you suddenly you cannot move your arm.
I was the captain of the wrestling. I was captain of the wrestling team. I had to go to. I went to every single meet. I went to every single practice, but I just sat on the sideline and I watched. I missed my senior year in college. I couldn't wrestle.
Yeah, I read a lot about the psychological aspect of injuries on athletes, because I was going through some really dark moments, not being after surgery with a lot of pain. And
Sure.
it's a serious thing, and it looks like people don't really realize the psychological aspect that these athletes goes through when they have such an injury like that. So, did you have any help, or was everything on your own will to get better?
I mean, I had she's my wife now. At the time, she was my girlfriend. I just had her supporting me and helping me, and encouraging me, and coming with me to, when I started training again. She was fearful that I was going to get injured again, right? Or I was going to hit my head or something like that. But I had her support, and yeah, pretty much on my own. I didn't, back then we didn't have too much by way of, psychological coaches or, people that could help you. That wasn't really a focus back then.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting. And that was when you were 23, and then you said that you had another major one later on.
So the other one was very unfortunate timing wise. I don't think a lot of people realize in my career, I have one world title. I have two bronze medals. I fought for a fifth at another world championships. But back then, the world championships was only every 2 years. And when I was in the height of I think I was in my peak performance between 1995 and 1999. That was my best years in judo, where I almost won every tournament that I competed in. Right before the 1997 World Championships, I was at a training camp in Colorado Springs at the training center, and the mat was really, really crowded. And I told the coach at the time that I said, "Hey, there's too many guys training here. You gotta clear some of these guys out. Someone's gonna get hurt." He said, "Oh no, don't worry, you'll be okay."
Oh.
I went and kept training, and sure enough, one of the heavyweights that was training next to me threw another heavyweight right onto my leg. And this was like 1 week before we were supposed to leave for the World Championships in 1997. And I didn't even want to go to the camp in the first place, but the coach, you're one of the leaders of the country. You got to come to this camp and be with the team. And I finally said, okay, I'll come. And then I complained about how many people are on the mat. They didn't listen to that. And sure enough, a heavyweight landed on my leg, and I almost tore the MCL ligament in my knee.
Oh, wow.
But it was I had a second, third degree sprain with complete immobility. I couldn't move my leg, and it was a week before World Championships. So I didn't get the chance to fight in the 1997 Worlds.
Wow.
I had to sit out of the competition as a result of that injury. So, I had just taken a third place in the Olympics in 96. I had won every tournament in 97. I was slated to, have a chance at winning the Worlds, and then I had to sit. So I didn't get a chance to fight in the Worlds for 4 years, right? I had 95 Worlds. I had to skip 97. I didn't get to go to the Worlds again until 1999.
Wow.
4 years is a
That
long time
probably
to go without
was
a world
even more devastating to you.
Of course. So that really pissed me off.
Wow, that was crazy. And you warn about that. Yeah, every time that there's a lot of people on the mat is dangerous.
Especially doing judo, and especially when you're trying to train a world team, and you only have seven men and seven men on the world team, 7 women on the world team. Your focus is on the athletes that you're getting ready for Worlds. We're a week out. You don't need to have 100 people training. You only need to have 7 partners.
That's true. That's true. Now, talking about the team, this is a question because I'm originally from Brazil, and the judo team in Brazil, they always do a good job when they go to the Olympics. There is always some good performance.
Sure.
Flávio Canto, Olympian.
Many guys.
Yeah, many guys, yeah. But my question is, when I moved to US 17 years ago, and I always thought that because of the infrastructure that the US has, because of everything, judo here would be way bigger, than in Brazil, and you would see way more local tournaments and competitions, and and the team would do better every year in the Olympics. Why? What do you think is missing to get there? Understanding that we have such a huge infrastructure in U.S. like as a country, right?
Well, we have a huge infrastructure for sport, but we don't have the infrastructure for judo. So if you think about all the sports where Americans are successful in the Olympic Games, you take something like swimming, for example, or you take something like wrestling as another example. Those sports are in every school system. They're in every high school. They're in every college. So as a young kid coming up, you can be a somebody if you wrestle. You can be a somebody if you're on the swim team or basketball team, whatever sport Americans are good at and we win in the Olympic Games. Most of those sports have a feeder system which is tied to the school system, which is junior high school, college. They get their scholarships in college, and then they can go on to the Olympics and they can win thereafter. And it's very, very competitive because there's so much emphasis and focus on it at the collegiate level.
Yeah.
So, any of those sports I just mentioned, we have college teams. But judo, we don't have college teams. Judo, we don't have high school teams. There's no infrastructure for the sport of judo. The other thing you have to realize is that, when we win medals in judo in the Olympics, we win 1 medal, 2 medals, or maximum has been 2 medals, really. So the U.S. team wins 100 medals at the Olympic Games. Judo's 2 of 100.
Yeah.
It's not that popular. It's not that big a deal. Swimming wins 30. Track and field wins 25.
Yeah.
Gymnastics wins 10. You can name the sport, but they're typically all gold because the U.S. team focuses on gold medals. So, when you're 1 or 2 of 100, it's not a big deal. Whereas in Brazil, your judo team wins 2, 3 medals. Your whole country only wins 10.
Yep, that's a great point.
So those 3 medalists, they're superstars because sometimes judo is always the first competition at the Olympics. So typically the first medalist from Brazil is a judoka.
Yep.
So now they're superstars. They won all the media attention. Then what happens when all the media is on it? Then all the people, they become heroes and everybody wants to do that sport and be like that person. They become celebrities.
Yeah.
And then there's a trickle-down effect to it where everybody, now the feeder systems come. It's the same like if you look at Israel. The country of Israel right now is massive in judo. And the reason why is because 25 years ago when I was competing, there was a girl in 92 Olympics, Yael Arad. She was the first medalist ever in any sport. She was a judoka. Well, she became instantly a national hero. Invited to the, not the White House, but invited to, with the Queen or the president of the country, and all the attention was on this girl who put Israel on the map as a legitimate sport. Then all the money went into judo, and here we are, 20-something years later. Judo is a legitimate medal sport from Israel, and they're celebrities in their country.
Yeah. That's very true.
Because they've now won multiple Olympic medals in that sport. That's where all the kids go.
Yeah. So the solution for US would be to include judo in as a regular sport in school.
It's very hard. Yes, it is. Well, number one, the first thing to do would be to get it in colleges. You'd have to figure out how you can put it in colleges, because without a path to even a partial scholarship or even a break on tuition. That's why everybody does sports to get recruited and to be a somebody. We want to be somebodies. So the way to be a somebody is you got to do a mainstream sport that's recognized by other people.
Yeah.
That's typically that's why kids play football, because they want to be a somebody in their local high school. And if they're really talented, then they want to get recruited and they want to go to college and they want to say they got a scholarship to go to college, or they're playing for a prestigious, team.
Yeah.
So it snowballs into becomes something big, but it has to start with college because we need to get it in the colleges and universities. Then it can trickle down, But it's very hard to get. Sports into school systems now, especially into high schools, because it's very competitive. There's 100 other sports they can pick from.
Yeah.
And there's only so much in the athletic budgets. And the American school systems, they're not nationalized. you have to go like city by city and get accepted and recognized in each city. It's not that easy to do. It's
Yeah.
a lot of work.
No,
So I think it has to start at the college level first. And judo has somewhat of an advantage because it's a gender equal sport.
right.
It hits that Title IX. You can have a girls and a boys team.
Hmm.
In fact, if it was going to be in colleges, I'd recommend that you make it a team sport only, and you have 3 girls and 3 boys on the team, and they compete against other colleges where there's 3 girls and 3 boys on the team as well. And that's the focus.
Yeah. No, makes sense.
Team sports.
Team sport, that's for sure. And one of the reason I ask this as well is because when I compete in jiu-jitsu, IBJJF, and when I go to IBJJF competitions, it's full. I mean, it's gigantic. Everything is packed. I mean, prior to the pandemic, of course. And there is always a competition going on. In Texas, there is always a competition going on every month. There is someone is competing in jiu-jitsu, but judo, we don't see that many. And when we go to judo competitions, it's really the amount of people is not really that much. And it was hard for me to understand because jiu-jitsu arrived in US way later than judo, and suddenly it becomes mainstream. But judo is not that many of people. Why you think it happened that? I mean, why jiu-jitsu took over the mainstream here in US and judo that is way more is a way older sport in US didn't really take off?
Opportunity. Really comes down to opportunity. If you think about when did jiu-jitsu come to America? Jiu-jitsu came to America in the 90s,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
When did the UFC start? The UFC started in the early 90s,
Yes.
right? So once Royce Gracie was crowned the champion of the first couple UFCs and everybody promoted Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, that's when everybody said, well, where do I learn this Jiu-Jitsu stuff? I want to learn it. So there was demand. Then what happened was the Brazilians came here and they started opening up dojos. And then, it started in LA, really,
Yeah.
So then from there, everybody realized, man, there's an opportunity to teach people jiu-jitsu, and most people in Brazil are broke, so they came to America for opportunity, and they started saying, hey, man, you can open a jiu-jitsu school and you can make a living doing it. And we can charge real money doing it, and it's validated on TV every single month.
Yeah.
And so it was free marketing for jiu-jitsu. And then those Brazilians told other Brazilians, and then when they were really smart about it, even today, jiu-jitsu is still growing in this country because people are going to areas where jiu-jitsu is underdeveloped, and they're putting their roots there. So, it started, LA was a big hot spot, New York's a hot spot, Texas is a hot spot, Florida's a hot spot. But now, like, they're opening dojos in Idaho, they're opening in Mississippi. Like, they're going to these other states where it's underdeveloped, but there's opportunity. And they're starting chains, and they've got 3, 4, 5 dojos in that area, and it's growing and growing and growing. And then they put the sport, but the main thing is they've done it as a business.
Well, exactly. Yep.
They've done it they're not giving it away for free. They're charging, $150 on the low end. As high end is like $250, $300 a month to train jiu-jitsu. The instructor can make money. He opens a professional school. He can buy nice mats. He can make it a nice experience for people, a good place for people to hang out. And it's become a culture of, a young adult culture of, hey, man, we'll go to jiu-jitsu. We'll be around other young guys. We're going to get fit. We're going to learn some self-defense. Maybe we go out after, have a beer, or we go out after, have some food. We enjoy each other's company. And guess what? Next weekend there's a tournament. Dude, when we bring our wives or our girlfriends, we'll go have fun in Vegas. And it's become a social thing.
Right, that's true.
It's not about winning and who's going to win an Olympic medal or who's going to be a world champion. It's about let's have fun, let's compete, let's have a healthy lifestyle. No pressure, And I look at, like, I don't know if you remember back years ago, the guys that used to ride Harley Davidsons. It was the same thing. It's a movement. It's a culture. Guys get their bikes and they'd spend their money on motorcycles. They'd go ride on weekends with their friends, go have dinner together, whatever. Now that's what jiu-jitsu is.
Yeah. No, and to me, what is outstanding from the sport perspective is because I started with jiu-jitsu and then I started doing judo as well because I needed to improve my takedown. But then I started doing judo and learning more about judo in Newaza, and was like, all those things not all, but a lot of those things came from judo. And judo has the advantage of the takedown. So it's like, why? And not only that, but that has the appealing also for you as a kid to train and perhaps become an Olympian, right? So from the commercial perspective, that is more appealing doing judo because you can be an Olympic athlete because you can go to the Olympics, right? Training judo. You cannot go to the Olympics training jiu-jitsu. So I never understood why this thing is not explored from the commercial perspective that much, you know.
It's given away. It's given away, and it was given away in this country. You know, years ago, the mindset of most instructors were, I'm not going to make a living from judo. I'm going to pass on the art. I'm doing it because I love the sport. I want other people to enjoy it and love it too. And it was really passed down from the Japanese that way. And then, you know, the instructors that came here, they didn't open dojos professionally. They opened it as a hobby, or they opened it to just spread the art. But over time, you know, American people saw it. It's very, very hard, very physical, and we focus too much on sport and winning medals and winning competitions. And it's really just about changing people's lives and making them healthy, you know, and healthy, feel good about themselves, self-defense. You know, we lost the whole self-defense aspect of the sport. There's no more kata. There's no more, you know, taking the knives away and how to defend yourself in hand-to-hand combat. You know, it's really just focused on how do we win competitions. And realistically, a lot of people don't like going to competitions, you know, because of the anxiety level. There's too much stress. I don't want to do it for that. I just want to do it so I can, you know, learn some self-defense, get fit, feel better about myself. And I want to bring my kids or my family to a positive environment. You know, and we've gone too far to the competition side of it. And if you look at like karate or taekwondo or any of the other arts, it's not about competition. You know, so they've done the extreme. They keep everybody in-house. They keep everybody safe, comfortable, feeling good. And that's how you grow a sport. You don't grow a sport by pushing everybody towards competition.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. But I still think that is a huge opportunity for judo to take off as a culture, just like jiu-jitsu, because it's beautiful. It's a beautiful art. I mean, it's just amazing.
Now that the problem is we don't have enough instructors. Now the problem is judo's not accessible in this country. What I mean by that is, Yuri, is if you want your kid to do judo.
Yeah, she does actually, my daughter.
Okay, but if you look, where's the nearest dojo? You might get lucky and there's one on your corner, but I guarantee you, in most states, the nearest dojo might be an hour away.
True.
Or 2 hours away.
Yeah.
You're not going to start your kid training in judo if you got to drive an hour there and an hour back. There's not enough time in our lives today to give up that much time.
Yeah.
Especially for a sport that you don't even know your kid's going to like or stay with.
Yeah.
And there's more competition than ever. You got baseball, basketball, soccer, jiu-jitsu, karate, right there in their town, 5 minutes away. So, you know, and that list goes on and on and on, you know, but so it's hard. It's not accessible. Even if people wanted to judo, there's not enough dojos for them to learn.
Yeah, the work that Flavio Canto is doing in Brazil is pretty amazing with the project that he has there. There's a lot of kids doing judo, and there's a lot of schools in Brazil for judo as well. But you said something very, very true, because for me, to go to the dojo where my daughter trains is 40 minutes drive. And in between my house and the judo dojo, there are at least like 10 BJJ academies in between. It's like, wow.
Right. But the other thing you just mentioned about Flavio Canto in Brazil has plenty of instructors. There's plenty of black belts in Brazil. Judo's a big, big sport in Brazil. And you can get good quality instruction everywhere. In America, you can't.
I didn't know about this problem of not having a lot of black belts in U.S. I didn't know that.
There's not that many.
Interesting.
Oh, there's not that many people that actually that could run a school.
Right.
There might be, but even if there's black belts, there's not people that want to teach or that want to be able to run a school and do it, even 3 nights a week.
Did you ever thought about opening a school for you?
I have a school.
Oh, you have a school in your state?
I have a
Yeah.
dojo, yes.
Okay. And
I've been running a dojo since 1996. I've had my own school.
okay, because I thought that you were only dedicated to train athletes and dedicated to the Fuji sports as well.
I have a I have both a recreational and a competitive dojo. Before COVID, we had 250 students doing judo.
Uh,
Just judo, nothing else. Just
that's
judo,
that's
250
amazing.
students.
That's amazing. That's like a jiu-jitsu number here in Texas in a school.
We had this right before COVID. Now I have like 90 something,
Really?
because it's
Wow.
a lot of social distance class. Well, we're not in Texas. Nothing's open in Massachusetts. Like we can only operate at 25% capacity. Everybody's mandated to still wear, had to wear masks through all of COVID. We could only have up to 15 people on the mat at one time. I had 250 people. We had 40, 50 people in a class. Now I have to have a class at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8
Hmm.
o'clock with only 15 people on the mat at a time. And they don't want to do social distance judo. They want to do real
Yeah,
judo.
that's true. And you still doing Zoom classes as well?
Yeah, we have Zoom classes for kids, all the kids and adults, because the people that don't want to come into the dojo, we want to continue to give them judo training and exercise and feel part of a community. And then the people that do come in, some of them we have social distance only judo, and now obviously we have classes, randori classes for the elite, more of the elite team or the competitors.
Uh,
But we still have to limit it to 15 people on the mat.
that's true. Yeah. Now, since you've been doing teaching judo for so long, and you just expose a problem of not having a lot of professors, black belts professors that are actually willing to teach. What is your recommendation? Let's say if someone is trying to open a dojo and they have the investment, but they are not black belt, for example, right? They want to hire someone to teach for them. What are some of the key aspects that you believe a judo dojo needs to have in order to be successful?
Well, you have to. A lot of people in judo don't teach from a curriculum. You have to have a curriculum. You have to have a path to black belt for all of your students. If you want to be successful, the student that comes in the door has to know what's next for
Right.
me. What am I going to learn, and what do I need to know to get to my next belt? Because everybody has to have a
Yeah.
goal. I don't want to just show up randomly to practice for a year and not know when I'm going to get promoted. I need to know what I need to do to get my next rank. That's number one. You have to have a curriculum and a path to black belt in order to have a big school,
Yeah.
because people
Yeah.
want, people want that path,
That's something that the Gracies did really well with jiu-jitsu. They had a path from white to black,
right?
and
You
you
have to
have to
have
have.
this.
Yeah, that's true.
And a lot of judo play dojos don't run their school that way. So that's number one. Number two, you have to have a good staff. You have to run your dojo professionally. And you have to have a good staff that not just teaches judo, but teaches them to be good leaders, good champions in life. Talks about work ethic, talks about, integrity, talks about discipline, respect, because that's what ultimately people are bringing their children, or they're coming there for themselves. I want to be more disciplined. I want to be more focused. I want to be more fit, or I want my child to pay attention better. I want it to be, to say no to drugs. I want them to be respectful at home and to respectful of others. So you have to have a good culture at your school that reinforces the things that your students are looking for.
Yeah.
And then, if you're not a black belt, you can be certified to be an instructor under somebody else. That's what jiu-jitsu does really well. They don't necessarily have a black belt that opens every school. A lot of blue belts, purple belts, brown belts open schools in jiu-jitsu, but the master instructor is a black belt. And he comes there once a month and teaches and does seminars and does the promotions of the students. And so that purple belt, the lineage is really important in jiu-jitsu. So find somebody to learn under who can certify you or who can validate you as teaching their system.
The
And therefore you can then open a school and run a school successfully without without having your black belt.
Do you, because this is very common here in Texas, and I believe it's very common in any dojo, do you as a professor, do you still run Dory with your students?
Like I said, I right now I'm paying the price, man, with with disc injuries. So I did randori, yes, with my students all the time. I really stopped randoring with the Olympic level athletes in my early to mid 40s. So when I was about 42 to 44, I was getting injured too much. I had to stop randoring with the Olympians because I just couldn't keep that
Yeah.
pace. But I still randoried with, all the teenagers and all the recreational black belts and, those types of people I would work out with.
Yeah.
But when I was a teacher, I was a teacher. And then if I was going to train, then I had my father, who's an instructor. He would run the class, and I would just train with the students. Somebody has to be responsible for making sure everybody's safe, everybody's doing the right thing, and the class is being run professionally.
And the other thing that I found a little bit controversial on this learning path, and I know that this is more like a Japanese culture of uchikomi, but there is a lot of people that say, well, uchikomi is good, but I've seen some students that they sometimes don't complete the throw just because they are so used to do half movement with uchikomi that when it's time to throw, they hesitate, right? Because they don't throw that much. They are always on uchikomi. What's your take on that? How you create that balance? Because I personally have seen my daughter doing this, right? She does the half of the movement and she doesn't explode all the way to the end.
Mm-hmm. Well, it depends on what level you're at, right? And what the objective is. Obviously, the uchikomi teaches proper movement because the footwork, the body placement, the positioning, the kazushi, like all of that is done through uchikomi. And you have to have that repetitive motion to learn how to fit the space properly. But you also have to combine that with completion of the throw. And that's when we do a lot of crash pad training, a lot of training with throwing onto the landing mats. So that even the young students, because we don't spend countless hours teaching our kids ukemi, because ukemi is boring. We don't want our students, if they're going to be competitors, to have good ukemi. We don't want them falling at all. So we don't reinforce that falling behavior. So when they do take falls on the hard floors, it hurts. So we do it you have to do a lot of throwing drills, throwing drills onto the crash pad or throwing drills moving around the mat as well, to reinforce that completion of the throw.
Did you adopt during the pandemic any dummy type of work? Because a lot of gyms, they started using dummies during the pandemic, and some gyms said that they actually like it now because they can throw the dummy all the way. What is your take on that?
First thing I did is I bought 10 throwing dummies. As soon as COVID hit back in March, I bought 10 throwing dummies. I bought kids ones and I bought adult ones. Because at that time we could only have 8 to 10 people in a room at a time. So I didn't need any more than 10 dummies, right? Spent like $5,000 on my dummies and my uchikomi bands. So I did, yes. We did throwing dummies, and we taught judo class as if you were, doing a class, but you had to throw the dummy 10 times with Ipponsei and Agi or Koshiguruma or Osoto. We did this, yes. It's the only way to keep it fun and interactive. Otherwise, they by themselves just doing shadow stuff.
Yeah, and I think also it's a good way for you to practice your throws without worry of hurting your uke. It's a good practice. I personally actually got a dummy just waiting to arrive. I got with Dr. Radi.
Okay.
He said he's been using a lot of dummies on his gym as well.
You can do a lot of other training things with it. You can make them carry the dummy. You can make them do squats with the dummy. You can do hold down drills, move from one technique to another and call out the techniques. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do with dummies. And at the end of the day, you got to keep your doors open. You got to generate revenue. So if you can, keep them excited about coming to the dojo, you'll do anything.
Absolutely. Oh, Jimmy, you are a true encyclopedia of judo and sports. So I really, really appreciate your time talking to the audience about the beautiful art of judo, and also reinforce how important it is the mindset of a champion. That's a very important aspect of the game that a lot of people ignore. So thank you very much for that.
Can't emphasize that enough, how important the mind is. I think without question, that is the key ingredient to greatness. That separates the best from the rest. Thank you for having me on the show. I wish you good luck in your recovery. I hope you recover fully, and I get to see you compete in the next jiu-jitsu tournament.
Or judo.
Yes. Or judo, either way.
All right, Jimmy. Thank you very much.
All right, buddy.
Take
Thank
care.
you, Yuri.
Bye-bye.